Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me on this edition of Coronatined with Copywriter. Today, I am joined by someone that I am a huge fan of, Lukas, and I've actually never said your name before. So is Resheske?
It's real close. Resheske.
Resheske. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
like,
Resheske. You could put an S at
E,
the end and a sh in the middle. Resheske. Yeah.
Resheske. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Now everybody knows.
I just like, I never realized I was watching. I listened to one of your other podcasts to like that you were on trying to like get it does like,
Yep.
oh no. Cool. Where does your name come from?
It's Prussian.
Oh,
So yeah, if a little European history, it doesn't exist anymore, but
yeah.
that kind of like empire of Hungary and Germany and those areas. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, look at that, getting some good information from the get-go.
Yeah.
Anyways, before we dive in here, Lukas, do you mind just giving all the viewers a bit of an overview, really quick, work-wise, I guess, of your
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah, so I would call myself a professional copywriter first, although in recent years I've also grown a fairly significant copywriting training program.
Mm-hmm.
So as a professional copywriter, I've worked with over 150 clients. I've been responsible for over $100 million in direct revenue for them and also indirect for their clients. So that's been amazing, obviously working with
Mm-hmm.
a ton of different businesses in different industries. And then
Mm-hmm.
on the training side, I think we're up to around 145 graduates and alumni of the program.
Wow, that's awesome.
Many of them work for Agora, Mind Valley, Hay House, a lot of Beachbody, a lot of like big publishers,
Mm-hmm.
and even more of them are technically freelance and now do part-time or full-time freelance. So um, that's who I am in a nutshell. A copywriter who trains copywriters and has been doing it for a while. And that's where we can start, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Well, and another thing of who you are, obviously, as indicated by your hat here, you have passions outside of copywriting. So, what are what gets your attention when you're not helping people make ridiculous amounts of money?
Well, yeah. So I'm a gamer, but not as much as I used to be. I
Okay.
used to game harder,
Mm-hmm.
and I have hobbies, but I was always a researcher, and so a lot of my
Mm.
hobbies involve diving deep into rabbit holes of things that aren't related to what I'm working on.
Okay.
So getting obsessed with how live stream metrics for gaming on Twitch and Mixer and things like that.
Wow. Okay.
Diving deep into YouTube analytics and kind of how personalities are grown there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got on a weird like Napoleonic War kick the other day, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of my MO is if I'm not working, I'm still researching or doing something. I read a lot of fiction.
Okay.
I play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just kind of a typical like almost 30-year-old nerd.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're just like, there is a way for me to make money and still enjoy my nerd things.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I a few years ago when my wife and I were moving away, I my brother and I were like, we should get brother tattoos, and so he and I got. I have Batman,
Nice.
and he has Nightwing on his
No. Okay.
in
Okay.
his on his thing as for our bonding, and although it's kind of like in that moment there was like this level of victory when I'm like, I have accomplished everything I ever wanted. I have a Batman tattoo.
That's peak. You
It's just
peaked.
like, what more? I have been to Italy. I have a Batman tattoo. Touched a
Mm-hmm.
koala. Life is over. Like,
That's it.
no more.
Yeah.
Anyways, cool. So that's really awesome. And even in that, kind of your hobby there revealed quite a bit about you as a person and what you're bringing into your work, which
Mm-hmm.
is the investigative kind of nature. I feel like that has, eh, I think copywriters hear about how important investigation is, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not really something that I think it's some people have it and some people have to cultivate it. Would you say you're
Mm-hmm.
a bit more inherently like that, or is that something that you feel like that you've kind of cultivated with time?
I think both. I think I've always enjoyed kind of diving into things and learning things.
Hmm.
But I also over the years have realized that and kind of gotten better at it and cultivated certain actions and ways of doing it and
Okay.
ways of bringing it in, because I think it's a combination of doing the right research and not getting overwhelmed
Yeah. Okay.
in the rabbit holes, but
Hmm.
and then also being able to write about it, because it's one thing to know stuff and it's another thing to communicate it effectively.
Yeah. Do you ever find that you kind of, is there, how do you know when you've kind of learned enough, or do you feel like that
Hmm.
you can, as far as like, kind of, you like on a Reddit, you're just like, do I go into another Reddit feed or not? Like, have I heard enough people
Yeah.
griping and complaining about their problem, or am I missing like a hook
Hmm.
somewhere, down
Yeah.
the line?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a hard thing to put a specific stop on.
Okay.
But the thing I usually tell people is that once you know more
Hmm.
than the prospect you're writing to, that's pretty much a safe spot to start
Okay.
doing the work of writing rather than the work of researching. And you're going to find other things. I don't ever really stop research and then start writing. I usually research, write, research, write, research, write.
Okay.
And so with copywriting specifically, I would
Hmm.
do enough to where you're confident. People give the advice to be able to write a page out of their diary.
Hmm.
That's kind of a, I guess, a metaphor or heuristic that you could use.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just more of, do I know more about the topic than the prospect I'm writing to?
Hmm.
And if that's the case, it's okay to start writing.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's really awesome. I've
Hmm.
definitely, back in college, I was always the kind of kid that felt like I had to have like three times the amount of information before I could even sit down, which is
Hmm.
cool, but that's just a level of like, yeah. One day when I'm getting paid stupid amounts of money to write very, very important sales letter, that'll be valuable, but maybe not today.
Yeah. Well, and you might hear this story occasionally in
Hmm.
from other copywriters, because it's kind of a famous story, but there's the con man who Catch Me If You Can is based off of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Have you heard the story? Is that,
I just know I've seen the movie. I don't know if I've
yeah.
actually heard the story or not.
So the guy that it's based off of, that was in a college class and the college professor did not show up to the class,
Okay.
and he got on stage instead and started teaching the class, and he went the
Okay.
entire semester before someone found out that he was not the actual instructor of the class.
Okay.
So like 14, 15 weeks of training. And when they asked him how he did that, he said, I read one chapter ahead, and that's it.
Yeah, okay.
That was the secret. And that's kind of a crazy illustration of saying where the magic is, I guess, in being able to lead and teach and influence,
Hmm.
because um, many people just they don't have a giant breadth of experience in something, and it's very easy to follow someone and listen to someone and be persuaded by someone who sounds like they know more, and there's
Hmm.
no gauge on how much more they know.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Especially like, yeah, just as I've on that's like kind of tried to build out a bit more of like a more public
Hmm.
presence, and like just seeing kind of like other people, like the types of things that are put out, the data, knowing my own kind of data that I have, screenshots, and then how easily things could be, manipulated or misconstrued, or
Hmm.
just like how many, if you're good at copywriting, like you can tell a lot of stories off of one thing, and so
Hmm.
you can just find ways to like rework a similar, one thing lots of different ways. um,
Yep.
I when I first discovered copywriting by googling how to make money online in
Hmm.
like 2015, I think is what it was.
Hmm.
And I was immediately like, as I'm like on Upwork looking for jobs as a beginner, I just like horrified as I realized that all of my life is a lie. and they're just like, doctor needs an article written. And I was just like, someone other than the doctor has been writing these articles? Like Caesar moment. Like, what is
Yep.
truth? Like, who do I even believe anymore? Like,
Yep.
which is just put an inherent skepticism in me that will never go away.
Yep.
But anyways, that's off topic. So
No, that's on topic actually. That's
okay.
very that's copywriting is one of those things
Yeah.
where you get to peer behind the curtain a lot. And you got to be, well, number one, you kind of have to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And number two, you got to be able to find the true nuance in it as well,
Mm.
you know, because it's easy to become cynical if you peer
That,
behind the curtain,
yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like to use a metaphor, I guess, when you find out that you literally pull back the curtain and the Wizard of Oz is a man with, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
man behind the curtain. Most people would stop there
Yeah.
and go, oh, everything I know is a lie, the wizard's a lie,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of get despondent. But the reality is, no, you've now uncovered a man capable of creating a wizard,
Yeah.
and also capable of controlling and you know and manipulating an entire country for
Yeah.
decades. So maybe you need to sit down and talk to the guy,
Yeah.
you know.
Interview
Like,
him, get him
yeah.
some coffee and have a
Yeah,
chat.
maybe you need to figure out how the levers work. Maybe you need to
Yeah,
figure out
that's
what
really
he's
good.
all about. And so it's easy to get cynical, but it's also really fascinating when
Mm-hmm.
you dive behind and really start to get that. So that's what.
Yeah, and I think I'm learning, trying to like control my BS meter, because there's
Mm-hmm.
like a level to where it's like good and healthy, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's a point to where like it's negatively affecting my ability to communicate with others, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
inherently becoming skeptical. And like, even in some of these interviews, it's just like, what do I even ask this person? Like, for
Mm-hmm.
you, dude, I've been on so many of your lives, but a lot of people don't actually do that. So for me, it feels like I'm like, I don't want to bore people with this common knowledge that Lukas talks about all the time, but that's not actually necessarily common, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah,
just
that
in,
too.
yeah, specific things. So anyways, kind of the one of the big goals for me personally in these interviews is getting to find out a bit more into the mindset of the expert. And so we've already been doing that quite a bit, but there was one question in particular that I had, that I want to make sure I hit before we go on any other tangents, and that
Mm-hmm.
is, was there any particular kind of experience that really shaped how you view copy or impacted the way you go about, doing your work?
Yeah. I mean, it's a series of experiences. You know,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
there's been some that were, you know, maybe a little bit more impactful than others in various aspects. But the myth of the striking moment of clarity is
Mm-hmm.
very strong in this industry, where just like
Yeah.
one thing happens and you flip.
Yeah.
But I think for me, one of the bigger moments was one of the things I talk about when I sell the mentorship program.
Okay.
Is one of the original reasons the sales letter even kicked off was because I found like a moment of clarity in my own life where
Mm-hmm.
prior to a certain point, I had felt like I was doing the right work to advance my knowledge and skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in reality, I was using information and courses as basically a procrastination technique to
Mm-hmm.
actually starting to write and starting to to learn how to do the craft for real.
Yeah.
And that inflection point for me was when I had first got a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
and I had started getting him to give me feedback on some of the things I was writing, and
Yeah.
he just trashed it. It was just because it
Mm-hmm.
was bad, it deserved to be trashed. And that kind of painful moment of clarity was, okay, everything you thought you knew up until this point is very different.
Yeah,
But I could
exactly.
also see the light in a couple of the areas and go, okay, this is what I was trying to do, and it didn't work because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of the bigger experiences that kind of shaped how I work and how I view things, because it allowed me to go from what I would consider to be a well-informed,
Mm.
but still ignorant person,
Mhm.
to a person who has genuine experience in the thing, and that kind of changed my perspective a lot.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
awesome. I recognize there's a lot of obviously day in and day out type work that we have to put in kind of in the way of progressing.
Mhm.
Um, and so I do, I think some people kind of have different moments where they like recognize different, yeah, like, do you feel like, I guess my question from that is, did that impact the way you then like being with a mentor? Did that impact the way that you connected and like wrote with other, like, did you see like potential clients, or did you see other people like differently from that kind of experience? Did that impact you in the way that you would go about doing your copy? Does that make sense?
Um, yeah, in a roundabout way, it did,
Okay.
because I think what I realized, one of the things I realized in that, was that my copy was very selfish.
Mm,
I wrote copy because that's how I thought the copy should be written,
okay.
and uh, realized very quickly that it doesn't matter what I think; it matters what the reader is getting, and
Mm,
what the reader's perceiving. And so,
okay.
it did change my perspective in that instance, because I started to notice when copy is selfish versus when
Hmm.
copy is focused on the reader,
Yeah. Okay.
and 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 that, that's not something that like makes me immediately judge a copywriter when I notice it,
Oh, no,
because
no, no. Hmm.
one of the one of the things I learned further down the line is it doesn't matter what my opinion on the copy is at all. What matters is how the copy is actually performing to the audience.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so like I see so many armchair copywriters who are like trashing sales letters. And one of the funniest ones I saw was somebody uploaded a sales letter, and I still to this day don't know if it was a troll. Like,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know if the guy genuinely didn't know and was trashing it and just being an idiot, or if
Hmm.
he was trying to stir something up. But he took one of Gary Bensavenga's sales letters
Yeah.
for
Okay.
the olive oil product, and he's like, "This is trash. It's too wordy. The guy's not even selling the olive oil. I don't care about this at all. Like, this probably
Hmm.
sold absolutely nothing. This is," and just trashed, a sales letter that had probably sold several hundred. I don't, I don't know exactly how well it did, but millions and millions and millions of
Yeah.
dollars
Yeah.
worth of
Yeah.
direct to consumer olive oil.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so, yeah, to answer your question specifically, one of the things
Hmm.
that I noticed was that, that there's a way to write copy that is not selfish and more focused on the
Mm.
reader and how they perceive it. And I started to notice that about others as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I feel like that's kind of like that would be a big turning point as far as in your perspective and the way that you go about it, because ultimately, like, yeah, the people don't care how pretty your
Hmm.
words are. Like, they care about if they like,
Hmm.
you're not, it doesn't matter how cool you sound. It matters if it makes
Hmm.
sense to the person that
Yeah.
you're reading.
Hmm.
I I had a public speaking specialization in college, and so I had to do a lot of like presentations, and that was
Hmm.
very quickly like you get that real time feedback, but that's kind of, and you're like, and then I'm going to say this, and it's just going to like floor everyone, and then you're just like crickets, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
shoot, I was
Yeah.
really riding on that one, but then all of a sudden you like, well, who are these people? What can I say to get the same
Yeah.
sort of response? And then you
Yep.
like that becomes, all of a sudden you kind of you switch your perspective from being like, how cool can I make this sound, to be like, how can I elicit agreement or reaction
Hmm.
from the other person? And that's going to
Yep.
be the goal. Even if I think this word is really dumb or this sentence is really cheesy, people love it. So I
Yep.
will keep saying it, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's, yeah.
it sounds, yeah. Would you say that ego is kind of a big barrier for or a big challenge, I guess, in the copywriting marketing sphere?
Yeah. I would say it's a challenge everywhere. I mean,
Okay.
I
Mm.
think it's a human challenge.
Hmm.
I think that certain industries kind of trend towards maybe having it be more of an issue, and
Okay.
copywriting is one of those. But I also think there's when you asked that question, I immediately thought of two stages.
Okay.
So there's the initial stage of ego, which is kind of like that armchair copywriter without
Hmm.
experience,
Yeah.
and that's the person who has unearned ego. You know, they've put a lot of time and presumably a decent amount of effort into
Hmm.
learning and reading, but it's kind of like a person who's read 50 books on how to do the perfect push-up without doing push-ups.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, it's very difficult. You might know precisely
Hmm.
what the mechanical angle of your shoulder is to your chest and how
Hmm.
to do it properly and how to brace your abdominal muscles so that everything is aligned. But if you've
Hmm.
never actually done that and
Hmm.
then realized how hard it was to continue doing that after the third rep,
Yeah.
then you have no experience, you
Hmm.
know? And so there's ego that comes from knowledge without experience.
Yeah. Okay.
And well, that's easy to shatter because you just make them do the thing. And then they very quickly realize that all of the 50 books they read don't help them very much
Yeah.
when they're not sure who their target market is.
Hmm.
And and so that's the first stage. But then the next stage, I think, goes further when you start to see the experience, and when you get the experience, you get wins. You start to trust that your experience is going to carry you through, and you start to ignore the fundamentals, and you start to believe that it's your skill that
Mm.
is making the sale, and that starts to kind of breed that expertise ego,
Okay.
where I think a lot of more advanced writers sometimes fall into,
Mm.
and can sometimes I've seen it where very advanced writers are still charging high fees,
Hmm.
and I hear, because I talk to clients and I also charge relatively high fees, that their copy just doesn't perform,
Hmm.
and not only does the copy not perform, but they're unwilling to make it perform.
Yeah. Okay.
um, and you start to get the expertise ego that is protective over their words and saying that there's some
Mm.
other reason why the promotion is not performing. You know,
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
the traffic is bad, or maybe the offer was bad, or those types of things. And so
Hmm.
absolutely ego's an issue, but there's different types of it and different
Wow.
stages of it,
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's very insightful as well. I hadn't really, yeah, kind of two sides there based off of the dangers, I
Hmm.
guess, on either side.
Hmm.
How you mentioned kind of the eh, it is how we some of the ways that we might justify poorly performing
Hmm.
a poorly performing copy. How do
Hmm.
you what's a good way for you to kind of determine if there are like external factors that are
Hmm.
impacting your copy, like
Hmm. Yeah, it's important to look at it objectively and also kind of through a system.
okay.
So copy never stands in a vacuum. It
Hmm.
needs traffic,
Yeah.
and the type of traffic matters. So,
Hmm.
and it's also what the offer is and what the copywriter can make the offer sound like are two
Yeah.
different things.
Hmm.
So it really comes down to looking at it in chunks.
Yeah. Okay.
If you think of the promotion as a whole, there's individual pieces.
Hmm.
There's the traffic, and within that, there's the various types of traffic,
Yeah. Okay.
and then there's how that traffic is being received on the initial part of the promotion. If that's
Hmm.
one page, or if that's 3 pages, or if it's a page and an autoresponder, all of those matter,
Hmm.
right? And every single point there is a potential point of failure, and
Yeah.
there's insight to be had from a copywriter who understands what type of traffic they were writing for in the first place,
Hmm.
and how it was supposed to flow through, and why the
Hmm.
offer was relevant to that traffic. So a copywriter's job isn't just to put the words on paper, it's to
Hmm.
understand who you're writing to and what that person wants as the outcome or the offer, and seeing the whole thing.
Hmm.
Because if it's just the person's job to put words on paper, then it's very easy to blame where the traffic is coming from. It's very
Yeah.
easy to blame the offer. It's very easy to blame technology.
Hmm.
So let me give you an example,
Yeah.
personal example, right?
Hmm.
So I wrote a video sales letter for a ClickBank product, and it was competing against 2 other VSLs at the same time. They were doing like a giant split test with a bunch of different traffic going there, sending, a couple thousand clicks over the course of a few days to each one of
Oh,
the
wow. Okay. Yeah.
VSLs. So,
Mm-hmm.
so a good amount of traffic,
Oh,
right? Not
good.
an
Yeah. Yeah.
enormous amount, but
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and my VSL was underperforming. It was the least performing VSL of the 3.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, that's strange. And so I dug a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, let's find out exactly what's going on. And then I clicked on a link, I went somewhere, and I'm like, wait a minute, Mr. Client, you said that when I click this, it goes here. And the client was like, yeah, it's supposed to. And I click, well, okay, when I click here, it goes here instead.
Mm.
And come to find out, long story short, that my video sales letter had been getting like 10% of the traffic that the other 2 had been getting.
Wow.
And the conversion rate on the 10% of the traffic was triple what the other VSLs were in their aggregate
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
conversion.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And so as soon as he fixed the link,
Mm-hmm.
the traffic started flowing in and the conversions went up, and my VSL ended up being the control for that promotion.
Wow.
And that's just one illustration of,
Mm-hmm.
if I had an ego,
Yeah.
I would have said, then it's not my problem,
Mm-hmm.
take my fees and walk away. If I had a lack of confidence in myself, I would have
Mm-hmm.
rewritten it.
Yeah. Okay.
I would have been, oh, my copy's terrible, I need to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that middle ground of going, okay, I feel like I did the best job possible, and based on the 2 that I'm competing against, I feel like mine's strong. So maybe I'll look
Mm-hmm.
at this and look at the holistic picture. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up finding out that that was a thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
Yep.
And then I guess I'm like, in that moment, I'm thinking about how I would have, was it discouraging when you first got that initial,
Of
like,
course.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No one wants to get an email that says yours is doing the worst. Like, yeah, that sucks.
I know, yeah.
But how you react to it is what matters,
Yeah.
And there's lots of different ways to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes, like, I got lucky, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think luck does have something to do with it. Like, I felt like I wrote a strong piece, but I got lucky in
Mm-hmm.
that was the fix.
Yeah.
I had another where,
I'm going to transition really quick. Sorry about this.
yeah, no worries. I had, I'll just keep talking while you transition.
Yeah, go for it.
So I had another where I wrote a VSL for a different client for a launch, and the launch really mattered.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an extremely short timeline.
Okay.
And so I was able to complete the thing and get it out. And the conversion rate was good. It was equal to, if not a little bit better than, most of the video sales letters that had run before for that client.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was at or beating controls. For this particular product, there were no other controls. It was a new thing.
Yeah.
But it was kind of standard. Unfortunately, it wasn't good enough because there was a partner involved. And so the margins were thinner. And so the regular conversion rate, or slightly higher than the regular conversion rate, wasn't enough to satisfy the partners.
Yeah.
And when
Okay.
you combine that with a shorter timeline, I was able to rewrite the lead and the headline to that piece and bump the conversion by a couple more,
Mm-hmm.
by a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah. Yeah.
timeline ran out.
Okay.
And so those types of things matter.
Yeah. Okay.
When you're a copywriter.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if your copy is good, you can always probably tweak it and improve it. If it's not good, you should be on hand to try other things. And overall,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to straddle that balance of feeling confident in the work that you put out initially, but also being willing to be humble enough to answer whatever the market says.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, the market really is the judge at the end of the day.
All that matters.
Yeah.
Well, let me caveat that. It's the only thing that matters, with the little asterisk that says, if you're doing client work, your client's opinion and feelings also matter, because they're the ones paying you. But ultimately, they're paying you to make money. So the market matters most. And you can be an asshole and say the market matters and I don't care about your feelings, but good luck getting another project from them. You know what I mean? Even if it does really well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I, I've I had a project that returned 6x ROAS for a
Hmm.
company out of the gate, cold traffic. They made like
Wow. Okay.
100 grand in 2 weeks
That's
on
awesome.
cold traffic, you know?
Phew. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that was cool. That was amazing. I
Hmm.
was super excited. Unfortunately, that client had only ever done warm traffic beforehand. And so they didn't like the conversion rate,
They
and
would.
their team was a little bit weird on top.
Mm.
I didn't get another project from them. So in my eyes, it was a
Wow.
successful project, but because of the client relationship, there was that weirdness. So there's always a little
Yeah.
asterisk
Okay.
next to the market matters.
No, no, no. That totally makes sense, and I think that just goes to show, kind of, too, with how I copywriter might be tempted to like be like, this is what I do, this is my one thing, and go all
Mm-hmm.
in. And to some degree, there's a lot of value in like perfecting your craft, but you really, there are so many different other things that you need to be at least competent in
Mm-hmm.
to make it and do well in a copy, like as a copywriter, because who cares if you can sell great words but you can't actually work with people, or you
Mm-hmm.
can't be, kind of like, you don't know how to handle awkward situations,
Mm-hmm.
or um, so
Yeah.
then, for the copywriter, like, who's looking to improve, how would you
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to cultivate that and figure out, like, yeah, like, what types of, kind of, the analytics, I guess, are most important, in places
Mm-hmm.
that we should like be paying attention, I guess. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. It's a bigger question than you think.
Yeah.
So, first thing is that as a copywriter, I've never installed a pixel for a client. I've never set up the analytics for them. So that's not my role.
Hmm.
Installing and making sure the things are trackable is not the role of the copywriter.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Uh, with that said, though, a copywriter should be able to understand and ask for things that they need.
Hmm.
And one of those is conversion metrics. One of those is traffic. One of those is, some of the tighter things like time on page, bounce rate, heat
Hmm.
maps, things that matter for analytics. Um, Now, that's the first part, right? It's not your job
Hmm.
to install them. And I kind of want to put that up there as a preface. The next one is that most clients suck at analytics, like are just terrible at even having metrics in the first place. You
Okay.
know,
Hmm.
they're and if they have them, they are not usually very trustworthy.
Hmm.
Uh, so there's kind of like a spectrum. If you're imagining like several concentric circles,
Okay.
the biggest bubble is clients who have no tracking whatsoever, or if they have something installed, they have no idea how to use it.
Hmm.
Um, that's the biggest
Yeah.
circle. The
Okay.
circle inside that are the clients who have stuff installed, but there's
Hmm.
errors, or there's problems, or there's outdated data, or there's conflict.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of data soup that you have to
Okay.
deal with.
Hmm.
Inside that circle are the people who really have their shit on lockdown. Their analytics are solid,
Hmm.
and they're very good at tracking things.
Okay.
Um, so with that understanding, you're probably going to get, for every 10 clients you work with, 7 of them won't have any analytics. 2 of
Hmm.
them will have crappy, unreliable analytics that you're going to have to double check.
Yeah.
And one
Okay.
of them will have very solid.
Okay. Hmm.
Um, so with those 2 things in mind, I guess,
Hmm.
if you want to improve as a copywriter,
Hmm.
uh, you either have to work with a volume of clients that allows you to have some insight into how your copy's performing,
Okay. Hmm.
and either have them be smart enough and willing enough to work with you as a direct response copywriter to either optimize the copy or try different ideas over time so you
Hmm.
can see what works.
Okay.
That's the best case scenario.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You either need the volume to deal with that to find your one person, or you need to
Hmm.
get lucky and work for get lucky and find them right away,
Hmm.
um, or work in house for a very, very, very strong publisher who has the
Mm.
analytics,
Okay.
and then you can kind of understand.
Yeah.
The only other option is to promote things on your own
Yeah.
and be
Okay.
in control of your own analytics.
Hmm.
So that way you can do some more simple stuff. Like, it's really easy to track how many people opened an email and
Hmm.
clicked on a link.
Yeah.
But that's enough for
Yeah.
copywriters
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
test,
Hmm.
It's really easy to run a Facebook ad, see the impressions, see the clicks, see the purchases.
Okay.
But you know, as soon as it gets more complicated than that, or you're running different pages and all
Yeah.
sorts of that kind of stuff, then you definitely need one of those three things I mentioned.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you at this point when you do work, do you try and see if they have someone like that can assist with the analytics side of things for?
I'm a little more forgiving because I know analytics are important, but they're also not a priority
Okay.
for most businesses, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
priority is cash.
Yeah.
And so they get away with what they can get away with unless they're heavy into the analytics or they run
Okay.
small margins.
Mhm.
So I'm more forgiving.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I also have kind of found out what really matters to me that I can go look for.
Okay, cool.
For example, one of the clients I'm working with right now on retainer does not have any sort of hardcore analytics set up and no dashboards or anything like that, but he uses Infusionsoft, and that means that I can go in and look at tags and look at pages, and he can
Yeah.
build custom links for me relatively easily, and that kind of thing works.
Yeah.
It's not super clean and it's manual, but it works.
Yeah.
And so with just that, we're able to, attribute certain amount of sales to my efforts versus organic efforts and things like
Okay,
that.
cool.
We've done some rev share stuff. It doesn't need to be perfect in order to be effective.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really helpful and insightful because I think there's like the component. Yeah. Copyright.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that like being a copywriter is not an excuse to like not understand all of that. But
Yeah.
there's an aspect to where especially working, depending on the type of client you're working with, like don't overdo, like
Yeah.
don't overdo
100%.
it based on wherever your client's at. Cause like you said, ultimately for them, our goal really is to kind of keep the client relationship good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so if there's, trying to like, if there's something, I guess maybe that you feel like is dire or could really make a big difference and they could implement, like maybe you could have a conversation with them about that, but probably not
Mm-hmm.
the best type of thing to just overwhelm them with. I need all
Right.
of these things in place before so I can ensure that we're like getting you the maximum amount of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
/ my numbers look really good.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's a good point to that. And it's, if you want to, I mean, I don't think anybody gets into copywriting because their heart's set on being a copywriter.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody grows up wanting to be a copywriter.
Yeah.
It's fun and it's rewarding and it's really it's a wonderful lifestyle. It gives you a ton of freedom, income, all the cool stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But no one grows up wanting to be a copywriter. And so I say that because most people are there because it's a career and it's a lucrative career.
Yeah.
And you have two choices. You can work with clients, which is its own thing, and they pay you and that's your income.
Yeah.
Or you do your own thing, and you write your own copy for your own products. And now you're a business owner who's also a copywriter. So you, in both of those instances, don't get to escape that there's more to it than writing the words. Even though the words are very important and understanding the market and doing the research is very important, there's more to it. And if that's a craft and a profession you want to cultivate, you got to walk in with that understanding.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really cool. And I think, it's definitely not installing Slack and then going on a mountaintop. That's not your solution.
Yep.
I
will say one
work.
more thing though.
Yeah. Go for
if
it.
I can, I will say
Of
one more
course.
thing.
No, I'd love to.
That sounds a little apocalyptic or like kind of like gatekeepy, maybe not apocalyptic. That's the wrong word for nowadays. Gatekeepy, right? It sounds gatekeepy in that, oh, you got to be good at this before you can ever do the thing. That's not true.
Yeah.
There are roles that copywriters can fill that are almost purely copy.
Yeah.
And one of those is email marketing. It's direct response. It's words. If you're doing it right, it's almost pure text. It's to a pre-prescribed list that's already there. You don't have to do cold traffic generation to make that list happen, or you're buying that list or renting that list from another list owner and you know what's there. So the stuff you need to know to do email marketing is not nearly as complicated as some of the
Mm-hmm.
other stuff in digital marketing.
Yeah.
Um, direct mail, if somebody's buying your addresses for you,
Mm-hmm.
that's very pure copy. Certain forms of content marketing, like advertorials, if you've got a media manager who knows how the traffic is going and flowing from there, that can be pure copy. If you're part of a bigger team and they all have their roles and you can just write words,
Mm-hmm.
there are definitely roles where the writing is your sole focus.
Yeah.
um, and so I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from learning the craft and going into it if they feel like it's going to be this big mountain to climb. But
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
but there's also layers, and to you might not want to come in and write a webinar as your
Mm-hmm.
first piece. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more to even making a webinar function, much less like promoting it and doing a good one,
Mm-hmm.
than meets the eye. And so I think that might be where a mentor kind of comes in handy. They can point you into whatever direction you're
Yeah.
incentivized to go in.
No, definitely that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many, it's, yeah, there's like, when I started in 2015, I was kind of like, oh no, I wish I would have gotten into this earlier, but it's still like anyone can basically be a copywriter and make some sort of sustainable income. Like
Mhm.
that's still I think you actually posted this back around Christmas time, I think, where you like were talking about how many business owners there were and how many copywriters there were in the world. And you just
Mhm.
like, there's like thousands of jobs theoretically per the amount of copywriters that there are
Mhm.
um, in
Yep.
the world right now. I and for me, like I worked in a call center before I became a copywriter, so I was like anything that lets me use like my creativity, I'm happy with. Like any level of creativity, I would be happy with
Mhm.
because it is I'm not I don't get to be like a novelist. I don't get to write like a bunch of flowery words. I tell people that I'm like if you're trying to be if you're doing that, like you should try and be the next Jane Austen. Like don't be
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
don't be a copywriter. You're in the wrong you're in the
Yeah.
wrong field. But I'm grateful for the level in which I do get to kind of utilize that inherent creativity and like I find a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction from that. But it's certainly not just like all like happiness. There's like a lot of, like you said, there's other aspects that
Mhm.
you have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of to wrap up our time here, I was wondering if there's any marketing tactic that you absolutely despise and wish would die immediately.
Yeah, I saw that when you sent that question. So I'm gonna turn it a little bit,
That's great. Do you,
um,
man?
because I don't like questions that ask what is the most, or what is
Okay.
the highest, or what is the only.
Yeah.
Um, because number one, it kind of forces you to prioritize,
Mm-hmm.
and something that probably doesn't need to be prioritized. But number two, like it's kind of how you look at things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that do annoy me. There's things that annoy me that are effective.
Yeah.
There's things that annoy me that don't work, but people keep doing them.
Okay.
um, and and so, you know, on the annoying but effective side, I don't automated webinars that
Okay.
are lying about being automated.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know,
Join us for a
like,
live presentation these 7 times in the next 3 days.
yeah, starts in 15 minutes. You're just in time. You
Yeah.
know, I know it's 3:30 in the morning where you are, and I said I'm from where you are, but
Yeah.
you're just in time. I don't like that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because it's complete. You're lying about the nature of the presentation
Mm-hmm.
in order to get someone to urgently react in a short time frame. And
Yeah.
I understand it works, like just straight up 15-minute, 1 hour,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like just in time webinars work like crazy,
Yeah.
because the vast majority of people do not understand what they are and
Mm.
just think that they stumbled on something lucky.
Yeah.
So that annoys me, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I'm trying to think of something that annoys me that doesn't work that people keep doing. The first thing that pops into mind is overly produced email newsletters.
Okay.
So like basically every template that every autoresponder gives you with like the ultra cool like
Yeah.
design and like, you know, the parallax with your headline over the background image of a mountain, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, cool like borders and that kind of stuff, and they all want you to have like flashing lights or whatever. That is not
Mm-hmm.
only utterly ineffective for conversion, meaning anyone who reads that email is not more likely to do the action you want them to do by
Yeah.
reading it in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually most of the time hurting your deliverability and your
Mm-hmm.
relationship with the email service providers, because there no one actually writes an email to another person with those elements in it.
Yeah.
And so overproduced, super HTML, over designed, it automatically reads from an ESP as
Mm-hmm.
marketing and or spam,
Yeah. Okay.
probably, you know, probably
Mm-hmm.
just marketing,
Yeah.
and then Gmail sort of to promo, or they'll just, you know, sometimes they just won't deliver it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or it'll soft bounce or something, you know.
Yeah.
and and so that's one of the things that annoys me that a lot of people do, that
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work, but they keep doing it. And I think I you know, I mean, I see stuff every day that gives me a little bit of a like, okay, what the hell.
Yeah.
But I also see cool ideas every
Yeah.
day.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And 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 you know, one of the cool ideas I saw recently is actually, I don't know if you know Billy Jean. Billy Jean is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I don't know him. I've never met
Yeah.
him, and I've never worked for his company. I don't know his products, but one of the promos I saw for him recently was pretty cool in that
Mm-hmm.
it was way less produced than everything he's ever put out, which is an
Mm-hmm.
immediate like contradiction to his brand,
Yeah.
although
Okay.
he's promoting to his audience, which is cool to me. That's an attention
Mm-hmm.
grabber. And then it's like a selfie video in a dark room, and the copy is very much like story based, let's help each other type stuff because of
Mm-hmm.
the whole scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the offer was cool. You know, it was
Wow.
kind of like a play along type 30-day thing.
Yeah.
And you know, just when you're a copywriter, you have to constantly be looking for stuff like that and
Mm-hmm.
analyzing it in a way like that, so that it, like, you're not wasting time, if that
No,
makes sense, you
100%.
know.
Yeah, that's really, yeah,
Hmm.
that's really cool. And I mean, the heart of the joke, the question was more inherently lighthearted, but I've
Yeah.
received some really good, yeah, like follow-up insight. So, you know, into that from kind of this very hyperbolic question.
Yep. I could have just said the fire emoji and then it would have
The
been over, and
I
that would have been a good.
know, fire emojis go away.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then when you were talking about the email thing, it's really hard because I was one-stop shop email marketer for a while, and it was
Hmm.
so hard because you have like the brands and this is how they do their email, and it's like branding. It's not even
Hmm.
like, I'm just like, you don't even know what their conversions are. They're just doing that because they're that committed to like presenting themselves
Hmm.
as this particular way, you know. And when
Yep.
you're Nike or whatever and you just have a stupid amount of budget, like you can afford to spend to look a certain way in
Hmm.
the eyes of your customers. But
Yes.
like most people aren't like that, and most people don't have the ability to like actually um like the bottom line, the conversions, that's what actually really matters for the companies. Like
Yep.
maybe when you're a multi-billion dollar business or whatever, like you can worry
Yep.
about some of those other things, but
Well,
until
that's a really powerful insight, and it goes into a much deeper discussion of brand and direct response and who should be
mm-hmm,
doing what and why. So I agree with you, but it's a super deep discussion, you know,
mm-hmm,
like, and
yeah,
it could be where Nike is doing the right thing because
mm-hmm,
they're doing a specific, you know, action. But yeah,
yeah,
that's that's one of the things I love most about it, and kind of goes back to my Wizard of Oz metaphor.
mm-hmm,
When you look behind the curtain and you start to understand what's going on behind the curtain, it gets
mm-hmm,
even more fascinating. And I think
yeah.
that's what keeps me coming back to the industry.
Wow. Well, that is a heck of a way. That feels like that's just like the biggest open loop right there to end this conversation. But
Checkbox.
hey, yeah, checkbox. I know.
Checkbox.
Good. We have accomplished it. Cliffhanger. Tune in next week. Same bad time, same bad channel, where we talk about the importance of branding.
You have
but
to you have to dab when you do that. I don't think the kids
okay.
are dabbing anymore, but you have to
I don't
dab
know.
with the Batman tattoo.
With
You
the
have to say same bat
bat
time,
time,
same bat
same bat
channel.
channel. There we go.
There you go.
Turn me into a Fortnite person. Anyways, cool, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It's been, a privilege and very insightful. I hope anyone who watches this will also, well, I'm sure they will. So I hope people watch it. And before we wrap up, is there any way that people can connect with you, or maybe anything that you have going on right now that you'd like people to know about?
Um, I'm easy to find on social media, just my name,
Okay.
which you can see on this recording.
Yeah,
So it's
awesome.
easy to spell. Same website, same as my name, lukasresheske.com. So I'm very easy to find if you want to connect. I've got a lot of free content.
Hmm.
And occasionally I'll make offers for something I'm doing. If that's interesting to you, if you're kind of one of the career-minded copywriter people, then just check it out when those happen.
Sweet.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much again, man. And I hope you have a fantastic evening, and I'll catch you around.
Awesome. Thanks for this, Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.